Conflict. You hear that word, especially at work, and you immediately think disaster, right? Like something's broken. You just want it to stop.
Yeah, and wanting it to just vanish. That's often the real problem. Our sources are pretty clear on this. Conflict isn't some kind of failure. It's actually, well, normal. It's what happens when you have different people trying to achieve something together. It only really turns toxic if it's handled badly or, just ignored completely.
Right. The sources define it as when someone, or maybe both people, perceives a threat. And here's the picker. The threat doesn't even need to be real, just the perception is enough. And when you sweep that feeling under the rug, it just festers. That unresolved stuff, it really damages relationships, kills productivity, makes people call in sick, basically makes work awful.
Exactly. So our mission today really is to cut through all the noise around this topic. We want to give you a practical way to, well, get better at handling conflict. We'll break down the basics, the three main types of conflict you need to spot. Then, the 5 core styles people tend to use without even thinking about it. And finally, the actual skills and even formal processes that can help turn disagreements from something negative into, believe it or not, a chance for growth and stronger connections.
Okay, and before we really jump in, there's this kind of aha moment from the research that, for me, changed how I saw it. Conflict often boils down to just fundamental differences in needs. Like, think about a parent and a toddler. The toddler needs to explore, touch everything, figure things out. The parent needs the toddler to be safe. Those needs clash right there in that moment.
That's a perfect example. It shows it's often not about who's right. It's more about whose needs get met in that situation. And just acknowledging that tension, that balancing act, that's kind of the first step toward making things work long term.
Okay, let's unpack that. Maybe focusing on the workplace first. Before you fix anything, you have to know what you're dealing with. So what are these 3 dimensions of conflict you mentioned?
Right. Knowing the type helps you figure out how to respond. So first up is task conflict. This is basically disagreements about the work itself. The best way to do a task, the right strategy, which approach to take. If you handle this well, you can actually be really constructive. It pushes people to think harder, find better solutions.
Okay, so like, I think method A is quicker versus, yeah, but method B is more reliable for the client.
Hmm.
That's healthy friction based on the actual job.
Exactly. That's the ideal.
Mhm.
But if task conflict isn't managed carefully, it can easily degrade. It slips into the second type. Relationship conflict. This is where it gets personal. It's about personality clashes, different working styles, maybe just not liking someone. This type, almost always destructive. It feels like an attack.
Okay, task is about the what, relationship is about the who. And the third one, value conflict. That sounds deeper.
It is. Value conflict comes from really fundamental differences. Things like lifestyles, core beliefs, personal identities. These are often the toughest because you're not just disagreeing about a task, you're challenging someone's sense of who they are. Resolution here is more about recognizing and respecting the difference, not necessarily finding a single solution.
We actually have a really good case study here that shows how easily things slide. Cody and Maria at Edgefield Electric. It shows how failing to handle a simple task conflict just blows up into relationship conflict and tanks morale.
Yeah, it's a classic situation. Cody, he's the experienced guy, showing Maria, the new hire, how things are done. Standard procedure. Maria pipes up, suggests maybe a different way, potentially faster or better. But Cody, instead of even, considering it, he just shuts her down. Follow the instructions, end of discussion. Now, technically, Cody followed company procedure. But how did Maria feel? Belittled, ignored, like her ideas didn't matter. That failure to engage turned a simple process question into a personal slight. She walked away feeling pretty bad.
Right. He defaulted to just shutting it down, imposing his authority. That's a very common reaction. And that leads us perfectly into the next section, understanding those default reactions, those conflict styles.
We're going to look at a model called the Thomas Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument, or TKI. It basically maps out how people approach conflict based on 2 key things. How much you push for your own needs, that's assertiveness, and how much you consider the other person's needs, that's a cooperativeness.
Okay, 5 styles. Let's start with the one that's high on pushing your own needs, low on cooperation. That's competing, right?
Exactly. Competing is the I win, you lose approach. All focuses on getting what you want. It has its place, maybe in a real emergency or when you have to enforce a critical rule that's non-negotiable. But using it often, it damages relationships. People feel run over, disrespected.
Okay. Then the polar opposite, almost. Low assertiveness, low cooperation. Avoiding. The conflict ghoster.
Avoiding. Yeah, you just sidestep the whole thing. Pretend it's not happening. Hope it goes away. The big trap here is that it never goes away. Ignoring conflict just lets it fester, get worse. You end up with that awful feeling of walking on eggshells. Productivity tanks because no one wants to address the elephant in the room.
Right. Okay, next. High cooperation, but low assertiveness. Giving in, basically. That's accommodating.
Yep. Accommodating means you put the other person's concerns way ahead of your own. You neglect your own needs to make them happy. Now, it can seem nice, build some goodwill maybe in the short term, but the sources warn if you do this all the time, you start to feel resentful. That resentment builds and builds until you either explode or the relationship just dies. It's often not sustainable for you.
Okay, number 4 is compromising. This feels like the one everyone aims for, the meet in the middle approach. But you flagged a big problem with it.
Yeah, compromising sounds fair, doesn't it? Find a middle ground, split the difference. The flaw is that you often focus on just finding a quick deal, not on solving the underlying problem or meeting the core needs. Think about that example. Team A needs $100 for a critical server. Team B needs $100 for essential training. If you compromise and give them $50 each, neither can do what they need to do. Both projects fail. You haven't solved anything. You've just created a lose-lose situation disguised as fairness.
Wow, okay, that makes the flaw really clear. It's a surface fix.
Yes.
That leaves the last one, the supposed gold standard, collaborating. High assertiveness and high cooperation.
Right. Collaborating is about digging deeper. It's understanding the needs behind what people are asking for. The goal is to find a solution where everyone feels their core needs are met, a true win-win. People who collaborate see the conflict as a shared problem they need to solve together. This leads to better, longer-lasting solutions and, crucially, builds trust and strengthens the relationship.
Okay, hold on though. If collaborating is so great, why don't we do it all the time?
Yeah.
Isn't it usually the slowest, takes the most energy? Are there times when you shouldn't collaborate?
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Yes. Collaboration takes time, energy, emotional effort. You shouldn't try to collaborate on every little thing. If the issue is minor, if time is really critical, maybe a quicker style is better. Competing might be right in a genuine crisis. Accommodating might be fine if the issue truly matters much more to the other person than it does to you and you want to build goodwill. But for the conflicts that really impact the relationship or productivity or morale, collaboration is usually worth the investment because the solutions stick and it builds that vital trust.
So it sounds like it's less about picking one style forever and more about knowing which one fits the situation and maybe managing ourselves better so we can collaborate when needed. What are the mental traps that keep us stuck in those less helpful styles, like avoiding or competing?
Well, there are a couple of big ones. First is simply conflict avoidance itself. That belief that if you ignore uncomfortable feelings, they'll just disappear. They don't. Avoidance just makes the conflict dig in deeper. The second major trap is overconfidence. We tend to think if this blows up, I'll win. We overestimate our chances of coming out on top if things escalate. And that optimism stops us from looking for a fair solution earlier when it might be easier to find.
Okay, understanding the styles and traps is one thing, but how do you actually shift towards collaboration, especially when you're feeling attacked or defensive? That needs real skills, right?
Absolutely. And it all starts inside you with emotional regulation. You simply cannot think clearly, listen well, or read nonverbal cues accurately if you're highly stressed. There's a great analogy from psychologist Connie Lillis using driving. Is your stress response foot on the gas, like angry, agitated, or foot on the brake, withdrawn, shut down, or maybe even worse, foot on both, tense, frozen, unable to act?
Okay, so if I notice my foot is hitting the gas, I'm getting mad, defensive, what's like the immediate first step? Something simple to just calm down.
You need to interrupt the physical stress response. Research points to something as simple as a 6-second pause. Just breathe, deeply, slowly. Focus only on your breath for those few seconds. It sounds small, but it gives your rational brain just enough time to catch up and stop you from just reacting automatically, maybe competitively or by withdrawing.
6 seconds. Okay, I can try that. Once you're a bit calmer, what's the next absolute must-have skill? You mentioned active listening.
Non-negotiable. Active listening is the bedrock of collaboration. It means shutting out distractions, really focusing on the other person, watching their body language too. And crucially, you need to defer judgment. Don't plan your rebuttal while they're talking. And the key technique is to paraphrase back what you think you heard accurately. Saying something like, okay, so if I understand correctly, the main issue for you isn't really the budget number itself, but hitting that specific delivery date. Is that right?
Huh. Just doing that shows you were truly listening. And it often completely changes the tone. It diffuses defensiveness.
Okay, so you listen, you understand. Then you need to state your own case
Right.
without making them defensive.
Exactly. And that's where communication techniques like using I statements come in. They're so powerful. Instead of saying, you always interrupt me, which is accusatory and puts them on defense, try, I feel frustrated when I can't finish my thought. See the difference. I feel diminished when you talk to me that way. You're owning your feeling, describing your experience. It shifts the focus from blame to impact, which helps everyone stay calmer and more regulated. That makes sense. Own your feeling, describe the impact on you. We also have a really simple framework to put this all together. The 3 R's of resolution.
Yeah, the 3 R's just give you a basic structure. First, recognize the conflict. What
Right.
type is it? Task, relationship, value. Second, respond thoughtfully. Use that emotional regulation. Use active listening. Don't just react. And third, resolve the conflict. Aim for that collaborative win-win outcome if possible.
Let's apply that real quick to Cody and Maria. Cody blew it on the first 2 R's, didn't he? He recognized a task conflict, Maria's suggestion, but he failed to respond respectfully. If he paused, listened, maybe said, okay, I hear you're looking for efficiency, Maria. My concern with changing the process right now is about quality control. Can we discuss that? They might have stayed collaborative.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
simple shift in response could have changed everything. Oh, and we shouldn't forget the wild card skill here. Humor.
Humor
Yeah.
in a conflict.
Yeah.
Seems risky.
It can be, but used well, it's incredibly effective. The right kind of humor can break tension, interrupt a power struggle. It can help you make your point without making the other person defensive. But there's a golden rule. Laugh with the other person, never at them. It signals that the relationship matters more than winning this specific point.
Right. Laughing with, not at. Key distinction. Okay, so we have styles, skills. What happens when things get bigger? When it's beyond just 2 people talking it out or maybe a manager helping, that's where organizations bring in alternate dispute resolution, ADR.
Correct. ADR tools are vital for catching conflicts early before they escalate into, say, lawsuits or formal grievances. They're generally faster, cheaper, and often lead to better outcomes than going to court. Why better? Because the people involved actually participate in finding the solution. So the solutions tend to be more creative, more practical, and people are more likely to stick to them.
Okay, so what are the main ADR methods? Is there a kind of hierarchy?
Yeah, you can think of it as escalating levels of third-party involvement. The first and least formal is simply negotiation. That's just the parties talking directly, trying to find common ground themselves. No third party needed is the foundation, really.
Makes sense if that doesn't work.
Then you might move to mediation. Here you bring in a neutral third party, the mediator. But, and this is critical, the mediator has no power to impose a decision. None. Their job is purely to help the parties communicate better, clarify misunderstandings, explore options, and hopefully reach their own voluntary agreement. Because it's voluntary and non-binding, it's really flexible and can work even when people are really dug in.
Okay, so the mediator facilitates but doesn't decide. What's the next step up then if mediation doesn't lead to agreement?
That would typically be arbitration. Now, arbitration also involves a neutral third party, the arbitrator. But unlike a mediator, the arbitrator acts more like a private judge. They listen to both sides present evidence and arguments. And then the arbitrator makes a decision. And usually that decision is binding, meaning the parties have agreed beforehand to accept it. It's often confidential too. It's faster than court, but definitely more formal and usually more expensive than mediation because you're essentially paying someone to make the final call for you.
Got it. Negotiation, mediation, arbitration, increasing levels of formality and third-party power. So bringing this all back to, the manager listening or the employee listening, why is it so important for organizations to get good at this stuff, to invest in these skills and processes?
Because the hidden costs of not managing conflict well are huge. We mentioned absenteeism, turnover, but also think about innovation, morale, team cohesion, even the risk of lawsuits. It all suffers. And there's this alarming statistic, what we call the resolution gap. Get this. Something like 81% of employers think they're doing enough to manage conflict effectively. They have policies, maybe some training. But when you ask employees who've actually been in a conflict in the past year, only about 36% felt it was fully resolved.
Wow, 81% think they're doing okay, but only 36% of employees feel resolved. That's a massive gap. It suggests managers might be checking boxes, yep, handled that, but the underlying issues aren't actually getting fixed on the ground. So what should managers be doing differently to bridge that gap?
The focus really needs to shift towards prevention and, crucially, early intervention. That means first building a culture where it's safe to speak up respectfully. Openness, Fairness, consistency, those are key. Managers need to be proactive. See inappropriate behavior. Challenge it right away. Don't let it slide. See a conflict brewing between team members. Intervene quickly, maybe facilitate a conversation using those active listening skills. But maybe the most important thing, empower employees to handle conflicts themselves at the lowest possible level. Give them the skills and the confidence to use things like esopause statements and active listening with each other instead of always escalating everything up the chain.
Empowering people sounds key. We actually have a fantastic, maybe surprising example of how a very simple tool enforced some of these core skills at the highest level of the U.S. Senate. The story about Senator Susan Collins.
Oh, yeah, it's a great illustration. This was back in 2018 during really heated talks about a spending bill, the one that led to that short government shutdown. Things were tense. Senator Collins, trying to get productive dialogue going in her group of lawmakers, introduced a talking stick. Apparently, later it was just a small rubber ball. The rule was dead simple. You could only speak if you were holding the object. That's it.
And it actually worked in the Senate.
Reportedly, yes. Lawmakers involved actually credited that simple rule, that talking stick, with helping them calm down, listen more, and eventually reach the compromise deal, 81-18, that ended the shutdown.
That's incredible.
Isn't it? It just shows the power of basic procedural rules when they force foundational behaviors. That stick forced active listening because you couldn't interrupt. It forced emotional regulation because you had to wait your turn, knowing you would get a chance to speak fully.
Amazing what a rubber ball can do.
Oh.
Okay, so that brings us toward the end of this deep dive. We've covered a lot quickly. How conflict often starts with clashing needs, why collaboration is usually the most effective style long term, and how those core skills, managing your own emotions, really actively listening, are the foundation, whether you're just talking one-on-one or using formal processes like mediation.
Right. And if we accept that resolving conflict well builds trust, makes relationships stronger, maybe here's a final thought for you to consider. What important conflict, maybe at work, maybe at home, are you currently avoiding? And what potential for growth, what strengthening of a key relationship is being held back simply because you haven't been willing to step into that discomfort and engage? Maybe just pick one thing we talked about, the 3 R's, or trying an I statement, or just committing a paraphrase and trying your next disagreement. Move from avoidance toward resolution.